Okay, so welcome to the DevSprint 002. This is the second session as we started in the last week. So today's session is all about like coding standards. So what we are going to talk about here, the best practices in the Python. Okay, so you are learning the Python, different sources, you already learned the Python, you already having some idea and all. That's really great. But thing is, how we are going to write a code, okay? See, everybody writing the Python code simply like they are following to see the output. So that is not the agenda, okay? When you're actually working in the big companies, big MNCs and all, you have to follow the coding standards. The Python is literally different from others, slightly different, not exactly the same. And we are going to have a look into it. And I'm following the actual Python or organization documentation. Okay, I'm going to show you that as well. So these best practices which I drawn from the completely from the Python official website, not from any sources. And we are going to see something called coding minutes. There we are going to explore the how standards will be. So this is very important, where you from, where you what stage you are learning the Python, how much you know is all like different cases, but you should know the best practices. The first thing is the Python is follows this something called PEP. I think most of you people know about what is a PEP. The PEP is nothing but Python enhancement proposals. Python document everything in the PEP. For example, when they are bringing any new feature in the new versions, they will create a requirement document. The document name is called the PEP. That's all, Python enhancement proposals. So this style guide for Python code is actually defined in the PEP 8. So when you go to Google, you type in the Google search for the PEP 8. So you'll get to know all the information about what coding standards we need to follow in the when you are writing the Python. But those things are not really clear, but here I organized it very well. So you are going to have a very neat information like this. So the PEP 8 is the requirement documentation for the Python style guide, so which you can get it from the internet as well. So I'm following the same thing. And second thing is naming. So how can I give the naming? So people write so much of code in the Python, but nobody follows the naming. Not only here, even I see that in GitHub, and there are so much of code is there. Everybody aims for the output. Okay, so that doesn't mean like you are maintaining the quality of code. The quality of code is very important. The quality standards are very important going forward, because now these code is, for example, tomorrow you are the technical lead, you are going to review someone's code. You should know that what standards I need to follow, right? It's not only for the naming, how many lines of code is needed in the Python functions, how many classes we can define in the module, and how the modules can be organized. All this we should know. So like you can act as a reviewer for your another peers in your project. Okay, so the coding standards are very important when it comes to the quality of the code to be delivered to the clients. So that's where we are now. So naming is actually like declaring the variables, how we can give the name for the variables, functions, methods, the packages, modules, the classes and exceptions. So how we can give these names, that's most important, right? So for example, when I'm declaring the name for the variable, the letter is always starts with the lower cases. Fine. For example, what if I have the two variable names? It must have the underscore. Similarly, with the functions also, we need to follow the same standards. Okay, we'll see that how we are going to write this code and how we are going to follow these standards. I will show you the code, then we can understand very clearly. So lowercase with underscore will comes for the variables, and the functions can be also used with the lower cases with underscores. Even for methods, packages, modules, we have to follow only one rule is called the lowercase with underscores. The classes and exceptions is always starts with the first letter is uppercase, that's called cap word, which we are going to use. And protected methods and internal functions, this we are going to use the again single leading underscore. Okay, how many of you know it? I'm not sure. When you're using the private methods, protected methods inside the Python, we should always use the underscore. So private methods is underscore, and product methods is always underscore. Whenever you see something in the Python with underscore starting with, and there are two things. One is the protected methods. Those are, we call it as the Dundle methods, magic methods, whatever the name you give. So those protected methods, it starts with basically underscores, and private methods also Dundle methods, but we can say that starting with the underscore underscore. That is a little difference we can understand us. So when you see two underscores, that is a private method. When you see single underscore, that is talks about the protected method or internal functions. And generally, the most of the people don't write constants in the Python, because in the Java people and different language people, they write much on the constants. Yes, for example, if you are defining any constants in the Python, you must follow all the caps with underscores. If you have something like two names of the variable names, then we should follow the underscores, two underscores we can define with the constants. So never ever write one letter variable in your Python code. That is really a sin, right? For example, most of the people, even me also, write sometimes like for I is equal, for I in list, for I in set, something like that we write. So don't write a single word variable name in the any Python code. That means you are not following the coding standards. Okay, this is the main rule from the Python, and the real Python people will hate you when you write a single letter variable in the Python code. So we need to avoid that one letter variables. Don't declare the one letter variables. It is a problem. So tomorrow, if you are going to review someone's code, first you check if anybody is writing the one letter variable. Suggest them do not use it as per the global standards, which is recommended by the Python org. So we should not write. And one more important thing is, it is my suggestion, don't create iterable variable name is I. That is also not recommended. Of course, when I say that avoid one letter variable, of course you will be not writing the more than I like that. So I is not recommended. Single letter variables are omitted, so we should not use. When you are writing the private methods, you should follow the two underscores. Product methods, you should follow the one underscores. Constants always be like in the uppercase letters. The classes and exceptions is always starts with the uppercase letters as per the standards. So if you can ask me questions, so what if I'm not going to follow these standards? Is there any syntax error? Absolutely no errors. The standards are different, the code quality is different, the syntax is different. So that's a reason. So our aim is not like generating the code with the results. Our aim is to bring the good quality code. This is very important going forward, because most of the companies are focusing on this nowadays. Code quality, not only in the Python, every language is nowadays is code quality is very important going forward. Okay, so let me talk about some more interesting thing here. Avoid redundant labeling. What is this? Everybody writes import some package name, some module name we write. But if you see, what is the difference between the green and red here? So these arrows talks about we should not follow the red one. For example, import audio is there. Here I have the core is equal to audio.core, again audio.controller. Basically, this controller is a subclass of the core. Okay, so we should not use like this. Okay, so when you are actually following these kind of standards, we should not follow avoid the redundant labeling, which is going to be a big issue in these cases. So we should avoid this redundant coding. Here, basically, like when I'm going to write, so here one small mistake which I made in the second session. Here audio core is there basically. Okay, so when there is audio core and controller, both are the superclasses and subclasses. So you have to write only superclasses. No need of the again defining the subclasses like this. So avoid the redundant labeling is one of the most important thing we should follow. Another important thing is basic style, right? So of course, when you use the VS Code and some tools, you may understand what is the meaning of indentation, especially using the four spaces, and don't use the tab. When you use the tab, so you will definitely tomorrow your code is not going to work. Okay, we should not use the tabs when you are actually following the style of code, like next line, third line, I mean first line, next line, and third line, 4 lines. If any lines of code which you are using, the indentation is you should follow always with the 4 spaces. Don't use tab. It is going to be a problem. It is not, the code is not going to be run. Because personally I experienced it. Somewhere I copied the code from the GitHub, and somewhere in the website I copied into my VS Code. When I'm trying to run the code, it is giving an error because the code which is having the tabs. Okay, so we should use only the 4 spaces, not the tabs. So this is enough of you understand what that is meaning. Okay, next most important thing is when you are writing the imports in the Python, so we generally write different imports, right? Some imports is from the system imports like Python imports, some imports is the third-party imports, some imports is by your own, like your own module imports. Okay, so we need to follow the standards. First, always write system imports. The Python related imports we need to write first. Then you have to specifically mention in the comment section hash, these are the Python system imports. And second one is third party imports. And third one is local source. Local source is nothing but you developer in the different modules. We need to follow these imports, and also don't use the imports circularly. You already imported this already one package, again you are somewhere in the sub packages you are importing. That circular import is completely avoidable. That will create performance issues on your applications. We should not use the circular imports. That is going to be create a problem. And the last important thing is when you are writing the comments, okay, don't write for everything. For example, there is single condition is there, if condition is there, no need of writing the comment for the if conditions, because that is really not way of good writing the code. Not only in the Python, any language you take, for simple line of code which there is like if conditions and for loops and all, no need of writing the comments. The comments mostly is applicable for the functions, classes, methods, and when you are writing something like a different functionality you are implementing it. Okay, basics things which is not required as for the BOBP 8 standards. So Python Python org is recommend you to do not use the comments for the small methods or like simple if statements. You have to use this comments only like whenever it is required, when it's really need a important thing. Okay, next important thing is the documentation. Yes. For example, when you are writing a doc string in your Python code, most of you know that what is a doc string. There are three types of the strings we have it in the Python. One is a single quoted string, double quoted string, and last one is the doc string. So single quoted string is actually bought by the Python. We can use it. Double quoted string is like people who comes from the different languages, they can be very familiar with this double quoted string. But there is a use of this single quote and double quote. For example, if you want to define a line of I can say that the one line of sentence which is having the single quote in that, if you want to display in the output, then we can go with the double quotes inside the single quotes. And the last type is called the doc string, which is having the triple quotes. When I say triple quotes, it is called doc string. Yeah, here one more important point as for the standards, use one line doc string for obvious functions. Okay, so any function you want to specifically mention who is the so what is the purpose of that function, you can go for the one line. For example, you are defining with the more information like what is the test case for this function, what is the return type, what are the parameters you are passing for this function, what is the summary line. All these informations we can go for the multi-line doc strings. That means you can write a doc string within the 2 or 3, 4 lines when you have this one. But I strongly recommend you guys go for this multi-line doc string when you are writing the function. For example, you are calling the data from the database, get the data from the database. So for that you write what are the parameters you are using it, and what are the return type, what is the return type, is it the integer or something else, and what is the summary of this whole the function is all about. We need to follow this multi-line doc string in the Python. These are all standards, right, which is we are going to look into it. So next slide is talks about the application structure. So what is application structure? Application structure is in the Python we should know. So these are all like I just copied from the one of the most important sources called Real Python, which is they created this application structure, which I am copied into this. You can understand what is the meaning of this. Okay, assume that you have a project folder that's called one-off, or you can say that anything, any name here. So helloworld.py, it's a Python file. Of course, when you are really working in the real world projects, we'll have the testing file, test file. So test file is always giving the name called test.py, and Python file is always naming with some naming conventions. We should not write Python files, any file name we should not write in the uppercase letters. First of all, do not write file names with the uppercase letters. It is really bad coding. Okay, so use always lowercase letters when you are writing the Python files or any files which you are recommended to that. So basically, when you are using the Python files, I strongly recommend you go for the lowercase letters when you are defining it. Okay, so when you have your own Python code, I strongly recommend you that go for the writing the testing file. Testing file is also will give some idea what we have to do with the with the functionality. So there are different types of the testing scenarios will be there. Positive scenario, negative scenario, which we can generally write in the languages. So we need to follow the test.py. And another important source is called the git ignore. So here what we are going to do, right? So if something which is not really needed for the deployment, or like something which is not really needed for the purpose of application execution, then we can go for the git ignore. So .git ignore will give you the idea. So what we can what are the files which we can ignore for the actual deployment process. So what is the setup.py? So this is something little give the information about what are the steps we need to follow when you are actually like this basically we write a script here. The script in the will tell you that what are the modules which we are used in this project. So setup.py will talk about what are the modules which we used in the entire projects. So you may use the request, you may use the something called URL lib, you may use it something called like regular expressions, something you imported. All these libraries we are mentioning in the setup.py, which will give the information. Just remember, this is a Python file. Remember, this is a Python file. Python itself is bought some terminology called setup.py. So you should not change the file name here. We have to use the same file name. So then we can keep all the information like this. And the last one is requirements.txt. What is the requirement.txt? Everybody knows, most of the people you know, right? Requirement.txt, this is not mandatory. Just remember, this file is not mandatory, but if you use this, you put in the root directory. Okay, so always this requirement.txt is there in the root directory. We should not keep in the somewhere else. So all this setup.py, git ignore, requirement.txt should be there in the root directory. So when you are mentioning this one, and we have to know this, what are the modules which we are going to use it for this entire project. So what are the modules we have it, all this we are going to keep it here, and which we can know when you are actually when you are actually hosting your application in the Docker or any environment. So this requirement.txt is going to help you a lot. For example, I want to host my application in the any cloud environment, Microsoft Azure or like AWS. So requirement.txt is going to help you. What are the softwares I'm using? What are the libraries I'm using in my application, so that I can use it, I can install it. And the last two is the license and readme.md. What is the license? License is, I will show you that structure of the license. Generally, license is not like that you have 100% rights, but yeah, for example, when you are using the third-party informations like from the MIT, from the Columbia University, if any POCs which you are using for the information, then we have to follow the license. I will show you in the next slide what is the license is going to be covered. And the readme.md, yes, this is also must be there when you are pushing code to the what I can say that GitHub or any repositories. When the person comes to your application, you should be able to understand what is actually meant for the readme. So readme, this is in the root directory again. So when you are describing about your project, so you have to tell that what is all about. So you can write this one in the markdown or restructured text or plain text. So it is recommended you write in the plain text. If you are good at the markdown, you can also use the markdown, which is very popular tool which is available when you are writing the documentations. So you can use the markdown, and also restructured text is there, which is available in the internet. You can also use that one. So similarly, you can see in this slide license. Okay, if there is no license file, copyright is default. When I say it is a license, it doesn't mean like it is 100% copyright. The copyright is different in the legal wise, but so we have to follow. So GitHub let you to choose when you are creating the new repository. So when you are creating the new repository, so GitHub will ask you to readme file, git ignore, and also license file, which is really important. So here one of the test code which I mentioned, which is MIT license. For example, if you want to create any license, then you have to mention your name, so your organization name and the copyright. So what is the year and what is your full name, who are developer, then you follow this text. For example, I want to choose my own license. There is a website called the chooselicense.com. You can choose the code, which is a little important when you are actually working on the open source projects and you are writing something like you are building own stuff which is someone is going to be used, then we can go for the choose license. So we are all developers, we should know what is the license which we are going to use it. Okay, so I'm going to write some code in the code minutes walkthrough, then which is very simple code. I think whatever we discuss, we can see this. Before that, I'm going to ask you the questions. Do you have any questions or like any points you want to discuss here? Please let me know. Now it's open for you. Any questions, guys? Okay. If no questions, then I will move on to I'm going to show you some websites here. So this is the PEP 8. So this is all I talked about so far. It is a style guide for Python code. So this is actually mentioned by the author of Python, Yuda Van Rossum, and there are other people. So it's from the same Python organizations. This is actually proposed in the 2001. This is actually a documentation where you can see all the styling of the Python. But it is, when you're going to read this content, it is a little clumsy and it's not clear. That's the reason I brought everything into the presentation today. So, but no problem, you can go and read something like this. Okay. And for example, what is the maximum line length? When you are writing in Python, you should follow the 79 characters only. So when you are writing a string more than 17 characters, it is not going to be allowed. Okay, so we should write 79 characters maximum when you are writing the function block. It is a global standard. So this is one of the interview question also. So please prepare for this when you are appearing for the interview questions as well as for the interview questions. Remember, this is only restricted for the doc strings and the comments. So when you are using it, so you should not use more than 72 characters in one single line. If you want to use more than that, then we can go for the second option. Okay, so like that, there are so many things are there. How to write blank lines, how to follow the things, all this information is there. So you go with this and you will get some idea what to be used, what not to be used, will get. Okay, so remember here, when you're using the imports, we should not use like import sys.os. So two imports we should not use, but most of the people do like this. Of course, me also. Okay, so most of them, the write Python libraries. This is absolutely wrong. The Python community is not going to accept you write this. There is a Slack community in the global wise. Then when we are actually talking about one conversation, one of the authors said, do not use this Python modules separated by the comma. These are all the standards. So what if I'm going to use? There is no any issue. It should work, not an issue. Okay. And so it's okay when you are using the from keyword, from with some module, and you're opening with these classes. These are all classes, but this is a different modules. Okay, this is a module, and with having the classes or functions, we can write it. So this can be used. So as I told you, first we need to follow the standard libraries, that is called system libraries, and also we can use the third-party libraries. Finally, local functions. This is what I brought into the paperwork, the presentation which you see. So there are so many things are there, guys. Just follow these standards, then only you will be a good programmer in the Python, and then you'll learn a lot of things. Tomorrow you can review the code for the someone. I have a question to you guys. If anybody can answer this question, how many lines of code is allowed in the Python functions or Python methods? Do you have any idea? Is that can I write like 1,000 lines of code in the functions? Absolutely no, right? How many lines actually on average is going to be allow in the sense like as per the standards? How many lines of code is required for in the Python functions? These are all interview questions, guys. Okay, these are all interview questions. When you go into appear some good companies, they will ask you. Okay, because coding standards is very important. That's where the people will differentiate you from the others. How far you are good at the coding, how really you are following the standards, how you write Okay, every time writing the list is not going to help you. So everybody will write different lists. They will create simple the variable names. It will kill the memory. So we should not create variables much. So we need to follow the standards. Okay, so again I'm asking a question now. How many lines of code is actually allowed to be write within the Python functions? You can post your answer in the chat box if you can. If anybody, if you know, 10 lines of code, 20 lines of code, 30 lines of code. Do you know any lines of code? 25 lines. Okay, it's pretty much cool. 25 lines. It somehow is meaningful. Yeah, somehow I got some answer. Yes, really good. You attempted something. Yeah, see, 25 lines of code is somehow is okay. On average, we can write. So Python is insisting that do not go for the more than 20 lines of code, and on average 18 is the mark. So 18 is the mark, but we write sometimes we see 20 lines, 30 lines also. But generally on average is 18 lines of code is required in the Python functions, but you can write it, okay? So you can write like 35 lines of code also, 40 lines of code also, no errors. But we need to follow the standards. Like that, there are so many standards are there. We need to follow these standards. Then you will get an idea what we need to do, what lower cases letters we are going to use. Naming styles are there. So I strongly recommend you guys use the PEP 8. This is called talks about completely naming conventions, and also will give an idea like what standards we follow. And the next one is choose an open source license. You can see here the open source license is there, which talks about what license you want to choose. Tomorrow, for example, I'm just sharing my experience. I'm now working on the one of the augmented reality. I started actually one or 2 days back. I started working on the augmented reality open source library. Okay, I want to build my own open source library. This is where I'm working. I started actually. So from first few months, I was looking into the augmented reality, which is I'm really interested. So I want to, once it is done, I want to do something like open source licensing for that library. What I can do now. So I have to follow this open source. This is everybody will do. If you want to, if you have any open source, and you can create license here, so which will give you an idea. So we can add a license. If you click the add a license, we'll get the information. So all the information will be there. You can just follow this one. So don't use it for the software, only open source tools we can use this. Example, MIT, everybody follows the MIT license criteria, which is having the very good standards globally. So just refer it, and we'll get some idea on that. So, and last one is regarding the coding. You can see on my screen, this is the coding which I want to show. It is very simple code. Let me expand the size of font size. You can see here. So when you are starting something, comments should go on the first line of the code. Okay, of course you can write the comments something like this. And most of the people don't know. They will write import is always the first statement. No, you can write the first one is the comments. Of course, every language does. And the second thing is the version of your project. Okay, so version is always represents by using the underscore version underscore. For example, if I install the pandas, if I install the numpy, scipy, matplotlib, all these packages, if I want to know the versions, I can use the underscore version underscore. Similarly, when you are building any Python related systems, we need to use the underscore version underscore, which will give an idea. Okay, so you can write all import statements here, whatever the import statements you want to write it. And for example, there is a variable name which we can always define with the underscore name. So yeah, so lower cases and underscores. Even functions also we can write with the underscores, which can be absolutely will be fine. So now that's basically works. And how many of you know it, this line of code, the 14 and 15, which is very much used when you are actually working on one module. Okay, so every Python module will have a main method, so which is internally works by the magic method. So we can use this code is going to be work. So when I say that import this, how many of you know that when I say import this is going to be work? This will give you the information about a poem. How many of you know that Python poem? There is a Python poem. So I'm going to execute this code. You will see that what is a Python poem and all. Okay, you can see this is a Python poem, which is you are seeing on my screen. Jenna Python. So this is a Python poem, which the one which I highlighted here. Okay, so it will give the information about what is a Python. how the authors is developed this Python. The beautiful is better than ugly, simple is better than complex. They talk about this Python is very easy to understand, very easy to write, and it is very beautiful language, and the code is very simple to be, everyone can understand, right? Even college students, even school students are also learning the Python nowadays, right? So the only thing is like it is very simple because of, and that also having so many libraries. And also if you want to anybody, this is also one of the interview questions. So if someone asks you how to create a Python poem, so you can easily write import this command, no need of any print statement. Okay, so import this command will give you this information when you run the project. Okay, but in the command prompt it is different. When you are working on the Python shell, there is a different commands are there. I will share with you later. And also I shared some days back in our WhatsApp group, but anyway I will share it back again. Okay, so yeah, we should follow the functions and all. For example, when you are writing the classes here, the classes is always starts with like this. So class and we should not like write like this. Okay, I think most of the people, okay, for learning purpose is fine. Okay, in the real-time scenarios we should not write the class name with just one letter. That is very absolutely meaningless. Don't write ever in the real-time projects single letter of the class. So I can write here, for example, the person is the class name. I can define it. So of course, root class of, superclass of all the classes is the object, obviously, that is in the lower classes. So this is only one thing, weird thing is from the Python. So they are saying that use the uppercase for the all the classes when you are right. So first letter is the uppercase, but they are not following the standard when you are actually importing the object class. So reason is there, I will talk about later, but this is the object is the class, which is a superclass of all the classes in the Python. Okay, whether you import, whether you inherit or not inherit, by default it will be there. Okay, but interesting thing is they are following the standard is with the lowercase letter, which is a base class of all the classes hierarchy. Okay, so I can define here. So init method also there. I can define here init method. So this is all you already know it. I don't want to go in the details of this. So I'm just giving an idea. So like just simply, right? I define one class with a simple constructor here. So this I can invoke by using the objects. So when you are going to call the objects also, we have to give the name of the object. So how can I give the name of the object? So when I'm saying that, we should not give the object name with a single letter, give some appropriate names. Okay, I'm saying that the person underscore object, for example, I'm saying that, and equal to, then we can use the person. So this is the class which I'm going to invoke the objects. For example, if you have any parameters in this constructor, we can give this constructor names. Okay, so standards are very important, guys. So the document will talk much. So go to the PEP 8 Python enhancement proposal 8 document, that will give you more information about this. Okay, so this is what I want to share with you, that because most of the people are writing the Python with low standards, that is really not good, because now Python is using everywhere in the machine learning, artificial intelligence, DevOps, data sciences, and augmented reality, virtual reality, anywhere. So automations, testing, everywhere is there. So when you are writing code in your organization, you should follow the standards. And one more thing is, do not write for loop with like this. Okay, so do not, whenever you see like this, for example, list x is there. Okay, list xs is contain the some values. For example, list x is equal to, I'm defining some numbers 1 2 3 comma 4. This is the list numbers. Okay, and I'm writing this, when you are going to use the print of I, you will get the output absolutely fine. What is the I? Do not use single word like this. This is absolutely not acceptable. Okay, so use something different. Okay, number iteration, I can say that it's a number iteration, list or list iteration, whatever the name you can, it is preferable, you can use. I can print like this, I can use that. So do not use a single letter word when you are using the iterations. First of all, don't use I is literally is not good. Okay, in the Python everybody hates. Okay, for learning purpose in your local system, you can go ahead. So absolutely no issues, but do not use this. You have to use like this. Okay, when you're using the list also, you have to follow this. Okay, for example, most of the people, they write list, for example, list y is equal to something, they write. So they are not going to use this anywhere. That means obviously this memory is created in the database. Sorry, not in the database, I'm sorry, in the memory management, right? In the heap space, it is created this. There is a private heap space is there in the Python virtual machine. So when you're using the list y is equal to this is something like this, the empty, the variable is created. That means there is some memory is allocated for this. When I say the list y, this is nothing but NONE, right? Object type is NONE. It is also one data type in the Python, right? So list is one data type, NONE is also another data type. So when you are not defining something, obviously this NONE is going to be assigned to that in the memory. The memory will be allocated. Of course, you are going to use the destructor or like something called freeing the memory. That is a garbage collector will be there, which is going to be called everything, the objects which you are not using more than longer time, then it will be deleted automatically. That is a different case, okay? But we should not use empty list, or someone, if you see any Python code, someone is using the empty list that is not using anywhere, that is also wrong, okay? And more important thing is, everybody knows that in Python, when you are using the with keyword, we no need to write. Everybody knows the purpose of with keyword is what? When you are writing the with keyword, we do not want to close any file. Automatically with will close the file. Of course, that is a really good, but as a programmer, you have to be good practice, because with can talks only about the files. What if I'm using the database connections? Okay, you have to close the database connection, otherwise it will create a lot of problems when it goes to the production environment, right? So these are all little standards which I'm talking about. We give an idea. I hope you got some picture on this, right? So this is what I want to share it basically. Okay, so we need to follow these standards. This will give some idea how to write a code and all. Do you have any questions, guys, before going to wind up? Hello? Any questions? Okay, fine. Okay, if no questions, we can catch up in the next session. The next session will be interesting. I'm going to talk about augmented reality. I'm going to bring some concepts in the next session, and also I will try to bring. So you can, if you have any ideas which kind of concepts you want me to talk in the next sessions, let me know.